go back to some peaceful conversation. Ruwayat, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, well, hello everyone. I'm briefly going to my question. My first question is recently United States Department of State, they mentioned that the activities of China in the South China Sea is totally illegal, and it mentioned its arguments and everything through that statement. So after that statement, the response we received from Chinese Foreign Office is not very much negative. Professor, do you think that this statement of the US Department of State can create opportunities for middle powers to engage into the South China Sea issue more proactively? My second question is regarding the Bay of Bengal and Andaman Sea issue. Very recently, we are observing that China is increasing its activity in the Andaman Sea and other areas of the Indian Ocean. Can middle power states and like-minded allies of Indo-Pacific use some platform like Malabar Exercise or Indian Ocean Regional Association, I mean, as a platform to act more collaboratively, more actively to tackle the Chinese inclusion or aggression, whatever. And my last question is that very recently we're observing in the Bay of Bengal and other parts of the Indian Ocean that organized criminal activities like IU fishing, illegal fishing, irregular maritime migration, they have been increasing. But very unfortunately, states like Australia, Japan, and other states of Indo-Pacific like-minded partners, they are not active collaboratively to tackle this situation. And these lack of joint work actually creating many loopholes to tackle this Chinese inclusion. So why Indo-Pacific partner states and middle powers are not cooperatively and collectively responding? Is this a dilemma between maritime security or the confusion between the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief? I mean, which platform they will respond to those cases? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, Stephen, if you got his questions, he's quickly asking three things. One, in non-traditional security, Chinese fishing trawlers have been a menace. And how are the local middle powers not reacting collectively to that? Second was his question about quadrilateral emerging, and in Malabar naval exercises, Australia joining or not joining so far as he says, but I assume Australia will be joining soon. Would that empower quadrilateral in terms of their security dialogue, because four are also doing naval exercises together in kind of containing or countering China's rising influence? And finally, the first question he asked was about how sometimes the comments that come from the State Department not always have a sharp response from Chinese, and does that create a space for middle powers to even intervene and influence the situation in South China Sea? These are three specific questions that Ruwayat has asked you. Yes, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, and please unmute yourself, Stephen.
Great, thank you. So I'll start with the last question first. So in terms of illegal fishing, the challenge with illegal fishing is that many countries are doing it, and whether we see it in the Indian Ocean or we see it in the South China Sea, it's hard to kind of detect who is actually the illegal fishermen and how do you manage this, because it's not something that's continuous. It's more sporadic. So how do you coordinate and collaborate on these particular issues? This is a challenge because it's not state actors that are doing it. It could be non-state actors, right? Illegal fishermen are not state actors. They're not businesses per se. So I think that finding ways to collaborate in this particular area is more difficult. one way to coordinate here, though, I think, is to think about where the illegal fishing is being done, and if a way to enhance maritime awareness of which ships are fishing in those particular areas or not. And I think that's probably an area where some middle powers can engage in cooperation. But the region that you particularly mentioned, I think that in Japan and Australia and perhaps other of the more capable middle powers, this is not a region that is particularly in their interest. So if I was to plot out a policy recommendation, it would be for Japan and Australia to bolster the capacity of the countries within the region to monitor and to try to push back against illegal fishing. The second question with regards to the Malabar exercises, I think that we don't know how long this show is going to go on. If it's a one-time show, it has no meaning. If it continues for 5 years and expands to the Quad plus Alpha to include New Zealand, perhaps Canada, perhaps South Korea, perhaps the UK, then this has some teeth, right? But it has to be sustainable. A one-time show is not that interesting, but a show that continues for many years, and we see collectively an increase in the number of partners in terms of a Quad plus Alpha, then what we see is this has some momentum. The question is how is that Quad plus Alpha formulated? What kinds of activities does it engage in? And can Quad plus Alpha be reformulated in ways to increase the number of participants? In my view, if you have a Quad plus Alpha for traditional security and a Quad plus Alpha for non-traditional security, what you do is then you create two streams of potential participants. In the Quad plus Alpha that focuses on non-traditional securities, well, why not bring in many countries, right? Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines. They all have the capacity to contribute. In the pure maritime security realm, well, that might be more limited groups. So we need to think creatively about Quad and Quad plus Alpha, and does it have to necessarily just be on hard security issues, or can it be in those non-traditional security issues? And I think non-traditional security issues will get more buy-in. More buy-in means building shared norms, building interoperability, building trust. And those are the key criteria for long-term sustainable relationships that can bolster a shared vision of the Indo-Pacific, not just security issues. And the first question, I think that the statement by the State Department last week was interesting, but like the Malabar exercise, we have to see what it is in practice over time. And the United States said that they would come to countries' help with vis-a-vis their claims in territory issues in South China Sea. I'm not so sure if the United States is willing to come to the Philippines' help with some nationalist Filipino plants a flag on some islands, right? Or if the Vietnamese do this or whoever. So I think that we really have to see how this plays out, and the United States has to walk a very, very, very fine line to put pressure on China and to ensure that whatever pressure they put on China doesn't escalate into kinetic conflict that could cascade into something more serious. Those are great questions. Thank you.